Hello, dear viewer, and thank you for joining me on day 10 of reading the Bible together. Today we are reading Genesis chapter 22 and 23 from the Old Testament, as well as Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, up until chapter 8, verse 13 from the New Testament. Let's start. Genesis chapter 22. God commands Abraham to offer Isaac. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He called to him, "Abraham," and Abraham answered, "Yes, here I am." "Take your son," God said, "your only son Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. There on a mountain that I will show you, offer him as a sacrifice to me." Early the next morning, Abraham cut some wood for the sacrifice, loaded his donkey, and took Isaac and 2 servants with them. They started out for the place that God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham saw the place in the distance. Then he said to the servants, "Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there and worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham made Isaac carry the wood for the sacrifice, and he himself carried a knife and live coals for starting the fire. As they walked along together, Isaac spoke up. "Father?" He answered, "Yes, my son." Isaac asked, "I see that you have the coals and the wood, but where is the lamb for the sacrifice?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide one." And the 2 of them walked on together. When they came to the place where God had told him about, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. He tied up his son and placed him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he picked up the knife to kill him. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." He answered, "Yes, here I am." "Don't hurt the boy or do anything to him," he said. "Now I know that you honor and obey God, because you have not kept back your only son from him." Abraham looked around and saw a ram caught in a bush by its horns. He went and got it and offered it as a burnt offering instead of his son. Abraham named that place, "The Lord Provides," and even today people say, "On the Lord's mountain he provides." The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a 2nd time, "I make a vow by my own name, the Lord is speaking, that I will richly bless you. Because you did this and did not keep back your only son from me, I promise that I will give you as many descendants as there are stars in the sky, or grains of sand along the seashore. Your descendants will conquer their enemies. All the nations will ask me to bless them, as I have blessed your descendants, all because you obeyed my command." Abraham went back to his servants, and they went back together to Beersheba, where Abraham settled. The descendants of Nahor. Sometime later, Abraham learned that Milcah had borne 8 children to his brother Nahor: Uz, the firstborn, Biz, his brother, Kemuel, the father of Aram, Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Yidlaph, and Bethuel, Rebekah's father. Milcah bore these 8 sons to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Reumah, Nahor's concubine, bore Tebah, Gaham, Tahash, and Maacah. Genesis chapter 23. Sarah dies and Abraham buys a burial ground. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died in Hebron in the land of Canaan, and Abraham mourned her death. He left the place where his wife's body was lying, went to the Hittites, and said, "I am a foreigner living here among you. Sell me some land so that I can bury my wife." They answered, "Listen to us, sir. We look upon you as a mighty leader. Bury your wife in the best grave that we have. Any of us would be glad to give you a grave so that you can bury her." Then Abraham bowed before them and said, "If you are willing to let me bury my wife here, please ask Ephron, son of Zohar, to sell me Machpelah cave, which is near the edge of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for its full price here in your presence, so that I can own it as a burial ground." Ephron himself was sitting with the other Hittites at the meeting place at the city gate. He answered in the hearing of everyone there, "Listen, sir, I will give you the whole field and the cave that is in it. Here in the presence of my own people I will give it to you, so that you can bury your wife." But Abraham bowed before the Hittites and said to Ephron, so that everyone could hear, "May I ask you, please, to listen? I will buy the whole field, accept my payment, and I will bury my wife there." Ephron answered, "Sir, land with only 400 pieces of silver. What is that between us? Bury your wife in it." Abraham agreed and weighed out the amount that Ephron had mentioned in the hearing of the people, 400 pieces of silver, according to the standard weights used by the merchants. That is how the property which had belonged to Ephron at Machpelah, east of Mamre, became Abraham's. It included the field, the cave which was in it, and all the trees in the field up to the edge of the property. It was recognized as Abraham's property by all the Hittites who were there at the meeting. Then Abraham buried his wife Sarah in that cave in the land of Canaan. So the field which had belonged to the Hittites and the cave in it became the property of Abraham for a burial ground. Please feel free to pause the video here for time to reflect on what we have read. Let's continue. Matthew chapter 7 verse 21 to 29. I never knew you. Not everyone who calls me Lord, Lord will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do what my Father in heaven wants them to do. When the judgment day comes, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, in your name we spoke God's message. By your name we drove out many demons and performed many miracles. Then I will say to them, I never knew you. Get away from me, you wicked people. The two house builders. So then, anyone who hears these words of mine and obeys them is like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain poured down, the rivers flooded over, and the wind blew hard against that house, but it did not fall because it was built on rock. But anyone who hears these words of mine and does not obey them is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain poured down, the rivers flooded over, the wind blew hard against that house, and it fell, and what a terrible fall that was. The authority of Jesus. When Jesus finished saying these things, the crowd was amazed at the way he taught. He wasn't like the teachers of the law. Instead, he taught with authority. Matthew chapter 8 verse 1 to 13. Jesus heals a man. When Jesus came down from the hill, large crowds followed him. Then a man suffering from a dreaded skin disease came to him, knelt down before him and said, Sir, if you want to, you can make me clean. Jesus reached out and touched him. I do want to, he answered. Be clean. At once the man was healed of his disease. Then Jesus said to him, Listen, don't tell anyone, but go straight to the priest and let him examine you. Then, in order to prove to everyone that you are cured, offer the sacrifice that Moses ordered. Jesus heals a Roman officer's servant. When Jesus entered Capernaum, a Roman officer met him and begged for help. Sir, my servant is sick in bed at home, unable to move and suffering terribly. I will go and make him well, Jesus said. Oh no, sir, answered the officer. I do not deserve to have you come into my house. Just give the order and my servant will get well. I too am a man under the authority of superior officers, and I have soldiers under me. I order this one, go, and he goes. and I order that one come, and he comes, and I order my slave do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was surprised, and said to the people following him, "I tell you, I have never found anyone in Israel with faith like this. I assure you that many will come from the east and the west and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob at the feast in the kingdom of heaven. But those who should be in the kingdom will be thrown out into the darkness, where they will cry and gnash their teeth." Then Jesus said to the officer, "Go home, and what you believe will be done for you." And the officer's servant was healed that very moment. Please feel free to pause the video here for time to reflect on what we have read. That's it for today, and I hope that you'll join me in the next video. Wishing you a graceful morning, day, or evening.